How does Ascendium view currently and formerly incarcerated learners in the context of post-secondary education as a whole?
Our North Star at Ascendium is upward mobility for low-income learners. And certainly, I think fair to say that an investigation of low-income learners has to include students with a history of incarceration. What's interesting about it is that I think that the student population of currently incarcerated students is actually pretty different from the student population of formerly incarcerated students. And so what's been interesting for us is to think about what are the specific supports and investments to make to improve on programming inside prison facilities, but then also how do we support this population of students on their way out of prison and back to their communities and back to free world campuses? Because I would argue, I think, fair to say, that that set of supports is different from what goes on inside.
I think to Molly's point, like these students, there are adult learners, there are low-income learners, there are returning students, there are all of these subsets, and they're like a side subset that needs a particular set of resources and resources.
What gaps in support currently exist, and how are Ascendium and its partners working to address these needs?
I think for me, the two big gaps that I see are in connections to workforce opportunities. So how are we supporting folks? How are we working with employers to have these credentials mean something that leads to a livable wage and sustainability, like once re-entering and being integrated into society. And then I would think the other one would probably be how we supporting folks as they re-enter, how are we helping them transition into campuses or into jobs. What are those supports and services look like? Who's doing what? What's working? What isn't working?
I would add only that I think important for us at Ascendium in our journey to be more equitable in our grant making and do the kind of grant making that really drives towards equity and the world we want to see, is that we're also trying to get smarter about how to invest in professional development, leadership development for folks with a history of incarceration.
How do we effectively integrate this population of learners into the overall post-secondary education community?
You know, we say often that reentry should begin at the beginning of your incarceration, right? So you don't wait until you're getting out of prison to think about reentry. And I would say that we are trying to approach our strategic grant making in the same way. So thinking about not just, okay, how do we make sure that when the student is leaving the prison or walking out the door, that there's some pathway for him or her to step onto, but actually backwards from there, how do we think about what does it look like for students to enter these post-secondary programs inside? And then what is the experience of matriculating inside of a prison? And then what is the experience of leaving that prison program and re-entering a community? And how do we make sure that that entire pathway is seamless?
Yeah, I would just say, like, generally we think of this as a continuum of services. So to Molly's point, like what's happening in prison and then all the way through to employment.
What makes you optimistic about the future of the field?
I think I'm just excited that with Pell being reinstated, there's a lot of attention drawn to the field. Philanthropies are thinking about it. Higher ed is thinking about it. The public is aware for the most part. So there's a lot of opportunity to think about from our standpoint, like who we can engage to kind of cover that continuum I was just mentioning from prison to workforce.
Yeah, agreed. I think so much has changed in this space, even in the last 5 years, let alone 10 years, 15 years, since 1994 when Pell Grants went away the first time. I think it's exciting to be working in this space in a time that The sort of starting point is not, should we fund prison education? That, at this point, for us at least, that is a foregone conclusion. So that gives us the opportunity to start at a starting point of, well, what does it look like to fund high quality higher education in prison? What are the right sets of supports for this population of students? And so that feels really exciting. It feels like a moment to re-engage public systems because public dollars are back. And I think that gives us the opportunity to sort of live into our mission as a system change funder in a way that we probably wouldn't have been able to do pre-Pell restoration.